Sounds great. Hi, everyone. I did almost say happy Friday a little bit earlier. It does feel very strange to have this meeting on a Wednesday, and appreciate your flexibility in joining us on a different day of the week than normal. It's, as you know, just a really busy time for all of us with lots of meetings and conferences and federation meetings and other opportunities to gather in person. So glad that we could find a different time to hold the March website chat. Go ahead and get ourselves oriented. You're all Zoom pros at this point, but some good helpful reminders. Here's the agenda for our website chat today. We've been working on a public library standards procedural document that we hope will make the public library standards reporting process easier for you, as well as easier for us to administer here at the State Library. So we're going to spend some time talking about that. Suzanne Reimer is here to talk about Montana's Digital Opportunity Plan and what that can mean for libraries and our role in helping to ensure good internet access for people in our communities. I'm going to share a few updates from our Network Advisory Council meeting that took place on March 11th. And then, as always, there's information about upcoming training opportunities and ways that you can connect with us. So to start, I'm going to turn things over to Tracy to talk about the public library standards process.
Thanks, Jenny. I'm going to go ahead and paste a URL in the chat. So as Jenny mentioned, we've been working on an updated public library standards process. And this came about because Jenny and I have been working closely on the public library standards for the last few years. And with a pretty extensive overhaul to the public library standards, we noticed some things that we thought could be improved. And one of the things we noticed is as libraries were completing their standards, which usually happens, it opens in May and then it closes in July. With some libraries, we're needing to answer, no, we don't meet a standard for a standard that just simply got overlooked or perhaps forgotten in just the rush of work and life. And then we noticed some inconsistencies in libraries that responded to the standards when they said no to a standard. Some libraries were really, really good about explaining why it was a hardship and how they were going to meet the standard, and others didn't have quite as much information. And so, Jenny and I and Pam and Suzanne kind of went back and forth, really looking at this process, because what we want is we want you to be eligible and receive your state funding. And we also want to help you get through this process. And so what we are going to try, that's a little bit different actually, is sending reminders to public library directors just in March, just kind of saying, hey, this process is going to be coming up. You might want to take a look at the public library standards and just make sure that there aren't any that are very easy, kind of low-hanging fruit that you might want to take care of before the process opens in May. We're going to use the same software that you use to submit your statistics to Rebecca Camp for the Public Library Survey. So that hopefully will help to have that same piece of software. And then we, as the assigned consultants to your library, will take a look at what you submitted once it comes in, and we'll work with you if you have a standard that you need to say no to and request a deferral, just to help kind of understand why you needed that deferral and help you figure out how to meet the standard in the future. And then one thing that Jenny and I talked about doing is adding a grace period. The checks do not go out until November, so we have a period of time where the consultants can work with you to try and get you to a yes on a standard before you receive that check. That way we can kind of take care of it beforehand and not have you. What we were seeing is libraries were saying, no, I can't meet this standard, but we will meet it within the next 2 or 3 months. And so that's why we're going to add that grace period, is to just try and go ahead and have that taken care of before you get your state aid and federation funding. In the document that I linked, it also kind of goes through and talks about the deferrals and what you can expect from Jenny in terms of what she's looking for when you request a deferral. and kind of what you can expect going forward. Like once your deferral is approved, the consultants will try to work with you to kind of make sure that you're following along with your plan. And if something comes up, because life happens, that we let Jenny know and we keep her kind of informed and change the plan as needed. So that was a really kind of whirlwind description of the process. Jenny, is there anything you'd like to
Mhm.
add?
Thanks, Tracy. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. As Tracy said, we want to help you be as successful as possible in the public library standards process. We certainly don't want the process itself to be a barrier to you receiving your funds and understanding what it means to meet those public library standards. So we think it's important for us to be really helpful and involved in that process. And at the same time, we understand and take very seriously the need to be really fair in how we apply the standards and the deferral process for all libraries. And going through this process, I think will make sure that we feel confident that we are being fair in that process and how it's applied to all of the libraries. So I hope that this will be a benefit for all of us involved. It is a little bit of a shift in terms of the timeline and the steps that we are going to take and in our communication with all of you. And as Tracy said, with some of the significant changes that we've gone through in the public library standards, we think that this effort is going to be very worthwhile for us and hopefully for all of you as well. Any questions?
All right. Well, I think all of you know where to find myself and Jenny and others. So if you
Yeah,
think of a question afterwards, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you, Jenny.
absolutely. Thanks for your time, Tracy. And I think one of the takeaways is you're going to be hearing about standards early and often going forward. I hope that's a good thing. And so you'll start to hear about them very, very soon. And I guess one other point that I would make is that, the standards are really intended to help us ensure we're providing that adequate basic level of library service. And so they are something that should be on our minds throughout the year. And I hope that this process will allow that to happen as well. Oh, thanks for that feedback, Mary Drew. Our staff really are very helpful. All right. Let's go ahead and turn things over to Suzanne to talk about the Digital Opportunity Plan.
Okay, we're going to give you a little update on this. And this is the state's, what the state calls it, the Digital Opportunity Plan. You may have heard it referred to otherwise as the Digital Equity Act. And a little reminder of what that is that that's a program from the federal government. And it covers 3 different programs. There's 2.75 billion in it altogether. And it covers state planning. And this is what Montana, you can see Montana's allocation as far as state planning goes. And then there's also 2 grants involved in that. One is state capacity grant, and the other is a competitive program. And you can see there are no dollar amounts attached to those yet because we haven't received an allocation yet. So we don't know what that's going to look like. And that is as far as the state capacity grant comes. They will decide on the basis of our plan. The feds will decide how much Montana should get. And then, hopefully we'll know a little bit more about what that looks like. The competitive program is national, and that will open up both the state capacity grant and the competitive program will be opening up, presumably. Let's see if trying to advance. There we go. Here's the timeline that we have on this. And You can see we submitted the state submitted the plan in February. And we haven't heard yet as far as what we're going to get on that. It hasn't been accepted yet. The plan hasn't been accepted. Our draft plan is still the one that is on the website. For some reason, the state Connect Montana office didn't opt to post their final version, just the draft. Yeah, okay. There were some changes to it. We just haven't seen those yet. The NOFOs, the Notice of Funding Opportunities, are expected to come out in spring of 2024. And if you looked at the calendar, you know that spring has just begun. So we're expecting to see those at any day. And hopefully that'll give us a little bit more of an idea as to what's available and the process for obtaining those funds. And then you can see what the timeline is for the other thing. The other thing to keep in mind on these is these are annual grants. So if you're thinking over a 5-year period, so if you're thinking, oh my goodness, there's no way I'm going to be ready to apply for anything like that this year, you will have opportunities presumably in following years. And as far as Montana's Digital Opportunity Plan goes, the goals are broadband availability and affordability, online accessibility and inclusivity, digital skills and device availability and affordability. So if you're thinking about how your library can work with this, you might think about how your library already serves towards these goals, what ways you would like to perhaps move in the future according to the other plans and needs of your community. And, I can say we certainly obviously do work with online accessibility and inclusivity all the time, and we help people with digital skills. So those are ways that we're already working. And so coming up with programs that kind of work more in those directions would certainly be eligible, I think, for funding. And specific covered populations that they're looking to serve are persons 60 or over, incarcerated individuals, veterans, persons with disabilities, individuals with language barriers. That's both people with, English, for whom English may not be their native language, and then also who may have lower levels of literacy, rural residents and members of ethnic racial minorities and individuals that do not exceed 150% of the poverty level. So those with slightly less resources. And quite often, once again, the rural residents, we serve a lot of rural residents in our states. These are already people that we serve in our communities. And so, if you have specific ideas about how you can serve these people better, it can certainly help you if you decide to garner funds towards specific projects. And we're going to, we have a guide that is already ready. We're planning on introducing it as part of a webinar sometime in the week of April 8th. We haven't been able to set a date yet because I'm trying to get somebody from Connect Montana, our Montana broadband office, to join us for that. And it's been difficult to get somebody lined up from there yet, but I'm still hoping. If we can't get somebody from that office, we'll try to get someone from NTIA, from the national program, to talk with us. Kate McMahon will also be on that. She's the one who's been working with us to create these guides and templates. Kate will also be at MLA, and she'll be available to meet with anyone who's interested in planning for digital opportunity grants. Those of you who took the survey and signed up, she will be in contact with you if she hasn't been already about talking about how to go further with this. The one thing to keep in mind is, this is a federal grant program, and so they are looking for partnerships. And so one of the things that will really help you a lot is to think big. Don't just think about an existing program that you have in your library. Think about things that your community needs and other organizations you can work with in your community or even outside your community, countywide. And that can help you achieve some real things with this. So yeah, and as Calais says, check the Aspen event calendar, and as soon as we get the date and time lined up, we'll put it in there. Any questions I can ask or I can answer on this vague topic?
It does seem a little bit vague. It's been quite murky, and Suzanne has done just a really great job to continue with the metaphor, trying to wade through very murky waters to try to understand the opportunities that exist and the roles that the state library can play and that Montana libraries can play in taking advantage of this opportunity. So thanks for continuing to wade through, Suzanne. Again, it's one of those opportunities like our broadband technology opportunity program grants that we received more than a decade ago to potentially really advance the services that libraries offer to support online access and digital literacy in our communities. So something to really pay attention to. I hope you'll take advantage of the webinar that's coming up, as well as visiting with Kate at MLA. And as we know more, of course, we will share that with all of you as we continue to look for ways to take advantage of this unique opportunity. Does anybody need a quick stretch break? Look away from your computer. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. All right, so as I mentioned, our Network Advisory Council had their most recent meeting on March 11th, last Monday. And I wanted to talk to you about a few highlights that we shared with them. We've been having an interesting discussion about the nature of the Montana Public Library Standards Roadmap. You are now familiar with the fact that the public library standards, when we changed them most recently, we moved away from having an administrative rule, essential standards that all libraries have to meet, and then degrees of standards, including excellent library standards that were standards that libraries could strive for. However, we still had the intent of wanting to have some kind of guide to encourage continued library development and advancement of library services through the public library standards. And we settled on this idea of a roadmap whereby we put examples of what advancing and collaborative library services might look like. We've really been considering some of the feedback that we've been hearing from libraries over the last year about what it was like to reflect on and try to implement some of the suggestions that are in the roadmap. We brought to the Network Advisory Council sort of a simplified version of what that roadmap might look like. And it led to some really interesting discussions about what is sort of achievable right now versus what we might want to strive for in the future, and really the importance of having an idea of what we think excellence looks like. Of course, that's not a right or wrong kind of question, but we heard clearly from the NAC and others that they want us to help provide criteria for what excellence looks like in ways that are measurable and certainly achievable, but also things that stretch libraries to continue to try to strive to provide excellence. It's led to some interesting conversations just within the state library about that effort that goes into striving to achieve excellence, particularly when libraries may be struggling with a variety of different issues, whether it's financial or staffing related or some of the other challenges that libraries are facing right now. So we're not at the point yet of adopting what a revised roadmap might look like. It's something that we'll continue to talk about with the Network Advisory Council. That draft roadmap was shared with the Network Advisory Council in their meeting materials if you're interested in taking a look at it. And we do have the meeting recording available if you want to listen to what that conversation was about. So look for more information about the roadmap and what it looks like to strive for library excellence in the future. We also had a really interesting conversation with the Network Advisory Council about how we might best provide or better provide technical support to libraries, including those libraries that don't have ready access to IT support within your libraries. We know that many libraries, most by far the majority of libraries, don't have IT professionals on staff. And some of you may have access to IT professionals through your local governments, others may not. And in some of the work that we have been doing with our internal wiring project, for example, we've become more familiar with some of the contracted services that are available through the state of Montana term contracts. So we're interested in exploring how local libraries might better make use of some of those resources that are available to you to help improve your information technology support in your libraries. We had a number of discussions that went in a number of different directions about individual library support, regional library IT support, the kinds of support that libraries might need, whether it's maintaining and upgrading your public access computers, monitoring and upgrading the internet and Wi-Fi networks within your libraries, and other kinds of needs of that nature. We think that there are some cost-effective, scalable opportunities there. And like the pilot that we did when we were exploring the internal wiring project, the NAC suggested that we explore a pilot for libraries that may be interested in taking advantage of these kinds of contracting services with the state. At this point, we don't have any funding at the state level to support these needs, but if libraries have funding and a need, this may be an opportunity for them to get some of that support. So we're currently talking about what that pilot might look like. And so look again for more information from the state about our next steps in that area of technical support for libraries. And Tracy, I don't know if there's anything else you would want to say about either of those two topics.
Yeah, with the technical support, since you just mentioned that one, Suzanne has been helping me because she's been working closely with libraries. And she confirmed that artificial intelligence is scary helpful because I was sharing with her some of my ideas and she came back and she's like, here's what AI said. And it was an extremely helpful kind of way to design a pilot that would we were looking at a small group of libraries and doing an assessment of where you're at now and what issues you have, and then looking at hardware, software, and IT support. And within IT support is fixing problems and also probably, hopefully, website maintenance and updates. So I am hoping with this target group to maybe have a geographic distribution, because that's one of the big questions for us is how do you do this statewide? What would that look like? My plan is kind of to begin to line things out sort of in May, June, and then try to start something in July. So I will be looking for volunteers. I'm not quite ready yet, but you might see something from me just asking if you are willing to participate in that project. And as Jenny said, unfortunately, we don't have any state funds, so it will need to be libraries who have perhaps some budget that they can put towards this project. And then in terms of the public library standards roadmap, that was a really great discussion. And I felt like I needed to go back to the drawing board, and I enlisted Colette to help me with this. As a working consultant, I feel kind of so close to the libraries, it's hard to create a roadmap that can be used for all libraries, because I know that that's very individual to you. And so figuring out how to create something that works for everyone and yet allows you to have that individual flexibility to make it look the way you want. And Jenny might have mentioned this, but none of the items on the roadmap are required. The idea behind it was always for those libraries who met the basic standards and they just wanted to kind of offer a slightly higher level of services. This was a way for them to do that. And so stay tuned. We'll probably be developing that over time. And as always, it will be my plan to bring that to the library community to talk through it.
Great. Thanks, Tracy. The last highlight from the Network Advisory Council meeting that I wanted to bring to your attention was a salary study that Rebecca has been working on. This was something that was worked on at the request of the Network Advisory Council, and I know you all provided information when you were providing your public library survey earlier this year. Rebecca's compiled and analyzed the survey information for the various staff salaries that we were looking at in the information that you supplied. Again, that study is available through the Network Advisory Council materials. It really is fascinating. It's somewhat disheartening to see the wide disparity of library director salaries and some of the very, very, very low salaries that some of our library directors make. It's interesting to compare some of the other staff salaries, keeping in mind the different sizes of libraries and the number of staff that libraries have. We talked with the NAC about what we want to do with this survey going forward. Who should receive it? How might we raise awareness about these concerns? And one of the pieces of feedback the NAC provided to us was that we want to share this study in a way that does no harm. We don't want library boards, for example, to see that there is at least one library director making minimum wage, and think that they could somehow reduce the salary of their library director. So the NAC provided us with some good recommendations about some of the context that might be necessary to add to that study, such as the sort of the geographic divide, as well as the budgetary requirements and revenue that libraries have as a way to provide additional context for that kind of information. The study does have some comparisons to overall managerial salaries, and we think maybe providing some additional information about sort of similar peer-related positions within local governments might also be helpful. So we're not quite ready to share that study publicly at this point, but if you're interested in it, again, it's available through the Network Advisory Council meeting materials, and as soon as we feel more comfortable in sharing that, we certainly plan to share it with all of you. We hope that you'll share it with your library boards. We've talked about sharing it with the Montana Association of Counties and the League of Cities and Towns and others as a way to really raise awareness about the concerningly low level of pay for Montana library employees. That's interesting, Mary Drew, that you're seeing low salaries across other departments. Good. We hope it'll be very useful to all of you. Any questions about the Network Advisory Council? I think the next meeting is May 1st. So that's going to be a little bit more of a retreat, kind of a roll up our sleeves working meeting to address some lingering questions that we've had with the NAC for a little while. But there will be a business meeting as well to talk about the roadmap and some other topics that have been on the NAC's plate. I want to draw your attention to some opportunities you have for learning and connecting with our staff. This coming Friday, we're really excited to be offering a webinar about libraries in the Montana legislature. I'm going to be participating in that webinar along with some of our staff, including Kara, and then members of the Montana Library Association Government Affairs Committee, Alyssa Wallentees and Rachel Ron. So if you're at all interested in the upcoming legislative session and sort of a high level look at what that work looks like, I hope you can join us for that webinar. Be offering a session on April 9th about Montana's water information resources, which I will just say are so cool that you definitely don't want to miss that session. Of course, we can't wait to see all of you at the April Montana Library Association conference. Tracy is going to be kicking off an awesome webinar series that we have planned for libraries and connecting with local governments. That's going to be a multi-series event over the next several months. So really excited about that. Pause again for any questions, and then just a reminder of all the different ways you can continue to connect with us here at the State Library. I will mention that the next meeting of the State Library Commission is going to be on April 17th, that Wednesday, from the Montana Library Association conference. We'll be there at the Copper King Hotel for their April business meeting. And then we have the regular conversations with commission the next day, April 18th. It's going to be one of the last sessions in the afternoon. We have 90 minutes this year, so it'll be a longer opportunity to get to visit with members of the State Library Commission. All right, feel free if you want to unmute yourselves and ask any questions or share any comments or feedback or any joys, as Cole said.
We're such a silent group. I feel compelled to say something. I did say how helpful the state library has been with the public library survey last year. Just feel free to reach out. They're just always so helpful.
Thanks, Mary Drew. Okay. All right. Well, everyone, we'll look forward to seeing you in less than a month. And happy spring.
thanks so much. The recording and our resources and all the links from today will be posted into the Aspen event probably by around 3 o'clock this afternoon. Our next website chat is scheduled for Friday, May 10th, unless something happens. So we'll update you if any dates have to change. But thank you so much for joining us today. As we all said, please reach out if you have any questions or comments. Thanks so much for spending time with us.
Thanks.